Back out to center. Here's Hofroggy with it. He took a hit in front of the Brandon bench, dumped down and in. Suryenko, who's been the busier goalie, the chance, they score! Ridley Greig, welcome back!
Oh, just a tremendous forecheck by the Brandon Wheat Kings.
They win the faceoff. Back to the line. Here's Nolan Ritchie. He'll walk in, back door for Greig. Here's Greig in, shoot, scores! Make it 2, Ridley Greig!
Well, the key is winning that faceoff, and Nate Danielson pulls it right
Far
back.
side, now to the middle for Ridley Greig. Here's Greig with it, holds, side of the goal now for Danielson. Danielson back for Greig, a shot, he scores! Right in his office, he puts it in. Trying to steer it ahead. Picked off by Gould. Good job by Hammett to hold the line. Here's Hammett, cross ice. Here's Ridley Greig to his backhand. In, shot, scores! What a play, Ridley Greig!
Attacking 2-on-2 with Nolan Ritchie. Couldn't get it to him. Had to play it around behind the net. Dug out by Brandon Pierce to the blue line to Ward. The wrist shot has Greig wide open in front. Step around Peters and he scores! A beautiful goal from the Ottawa Senators prospect Ridley Greig, and the Brandon Wheat Kings will huddle around and headbutt like they've done for decades before. They lead it 1-0.
Brandon. Here comes Danielson into the slot near side for Greig, and he scores! Ridley Greig finally gets one through Meyer, and it's a 1-goal ball game.
Well, Ridley Greig has just been knocking on the door from the start of this hockey game.
Normally see, here's a chance for a breakaway. Ridley Greig all the way from center. Greig in, stopped by Unger, they score! How did that go in? Davies in, and a poke check from Ethan Kruger. Shot towards the goal, it's knocked down, and Kruger got run over again, and a penalty coming up to Rylan Thiessen. And now a breakaway chance for Ridley. Greig's gonna cut to the goal stop. Rebound, they score! Chaos from one end of the ice to the other, and the Wheat Kings somehow score a goal. Chance for Ridley Greig. Partial 2-on-1. Here comes Greig in, shoot, scores! Ridley Greig, the wrist shot, beats Dick, it's 7-1. Trying to make sure he had the right angle to make the correct call. Back down to the corner, here's Callie and Kelly. Centering pass, they score! Ridley Greig on the doorstep, it's 2-0. Callie and Kelly, 2-on-2, shorthanded. Greig dropped it off, here's Callie and Kelly. Back across, they score! How about that? A shorthanded marker, it's 3-1. Ritchie, a steal there. Back to the front of the net, here's Greig. In, move, stopped by Bjorklund, and they score. Ridley Greig stayed with it, and just like that, it's the first career hat trick for Ridley Greig. Now he'll throw it on goal, tipped in front. Ritchie's wide open. Can they get to the loose puck? It's tied up, back to the point they go. Chad Nychuk wants to walk in. One-timer, they score. Ridley Greig from the bottom of the circle, and it's 3-2. The point for Chad Nychuk. Throws it on goal, tipped just wide. Ridley Greig to the open net, and he scores. Nychuk another assist as Ridley Greig into the open net. It's 4-3.
Minute minor for slashing. Charging in comes Ridley Greig. Over to Danielson. Back for Greig. Oh, what a goal! From his knees, a give and go with Nate Danielson. And Brandon jumps into the lead. Watcher over the blue line, can't play it, and here comes Ridley Greig with some speed in on the wing. Greig stops, shoots, and scores! Oh, what a shot by Ridley Greig off the post and in. And Brandon retakes the lead here in the early parts of the second.
Finds it for Redyer, gets it to the blue line, but it's held in there by Ritchie. Danielson, high slot, shot, save, Unger, rebound, they score! Connor Unger made the initial save, but the puck bounced behind him, and Ridley Greig was the only one there to find it. And with 4:58 left in the first period, Brandon scores on the power play. Wheat Kings lead 1-0.
Into center ice, Dylan Gunther. He might have a step. He's in left wing circle. Delays pass across, and it's intercepted by a back-checking Ridley Greig. Will now sprint to center, and the Wheat Kings have numbers. Greig in over the line. Right wing circle, delays, wrist shot, pad save. Kosa, rebound. Kosa can't stop that one as it gets underneath him and in. Late reaction there from the Wheat Kings, but Ridley Greig follows up his own shot and jams home the rebound. Just like that, the Wheat Kings have tied the game at 3.
Away from Greig, now taken away from Wong by the Wheat Kings. Danielson in front, they score! Della Gorjandier in the crease, tangling up there with Ridley Greig, and the puck goes in off one of them and in, and Brandon has a 2-0 lead after the Blades had the opportunity at the other end.
It's a step around Masters. Here's Greig in, a shot, he scores! Ask and you shall receive. 1-1. At the line, trying to get back to his feet, picked off and out to center ice. Here's a breakaway for Ridley Greig. Can he get to the loose puck? He can, he scores!
Greig in the high slot to Nychuk, back for Greig, right circle, cutting in front. Greig scores! 5 seconds to go in the first power play. Here's Nate Danielson, right circle, waiting. Danielson back in front, and they score! Ridley Greig capitalizes on the power play and the delayed penalty. as the Broncos giving up another power play goal. The Wheat Kings have their first lead of the night at 2-1. And Ridley Greig, who took that heavy hit from Wyrostock, who's still going to go to the box, finds the back of the net as Greig continues to terrorize the Broncos.
Slowly holding on. Nychuk to Iorio. One-timer. Pad save. Rebound. They score. Ridley Greig will put in the loose change. Brandon scores on the 5-on-3 and now has a 3-1 lead.
Quick one-time shot from the point. Tedachuk reacts, kicks it out, but Ridley Greig right there.
Plays it off a skate, gets it back, moves it over to Ridley Greig. Backhand, scores! Oh, what a shot by Ridley Greig. 11 seconds into this third period, giving the Wheat Kings a 2-goal lead.
Wow, that's a goal scorer's goal. That's some slick hands there. Greig gets that puck and just drives to his backhand.
For Nychuk, for Ritchie again. Traffic forming. Back door. Here's Greig. A shot. He scores. Power play goal. It's 3-1.